Okay, not sure why the feed dropped, but I'm going to pick up that story where I left off. So, as an aside, Gary Wilson's TED Talk. Oh, hang on, I didn't pick up. Okay, here we go. Gary Wilson, the author of Your Brain on Porn, adds, and it's available 24/7 on handheld devices, which means younger children are seeing hardcore porn at a time when their brains are still developing, and the dopamine rush that porn elicits can lead to an addiction. As an aside, Gary Wilson's TED Talk, The Great Porn Experiment, where he summarizes more of these concepts, has been viewed 9,792,873 times, at least as of yesterday, and thousands more on repeat posts of the same talk on YouTube. Clearly, he is tapping into something people want to know more about. So back to the story. Jared Brock co-directed the 2016 documentary Over 18, which examines pornography and its effects on young people. He is one of the many advocating for meaningful age verification on porn sites. The UK plans to implement its age verification system by the end of 2018, after a delay this month. It requires porn sites to verify ages through a third party or face penalties, including the possibility of paying hundreds of dollars per incident. A quote from Brock, "Wouldn't it be nice for this next generation of kids if they just simply don't have access to porn, so that when they Google chicks or Hawaii or girls or sisters or stepmoms, they are not going to find crazy, violent sexual imagery?" This is a child protection issue. We want to protect our kids so we don't have a generation growing up objectifying women, treating the opposite gender like sexual objects, or boys being treated like they're animals, like they can't control their sex drives. Paisley, an Elmira, Ontario resident, recalls being addicted to porn. He says, "When I got my first laptop, my mom would wonder why I was so tired. I would stay up 3 to 4 a.m. viewing pornography, get a few hours of sleep, go to school, come home, and watch more porn through the night," he said. At that age, you're so overstimulated by it that you don't know what to do with it. It's not something you've experienced before. The only way I can think about it is an addiction, desperate for that fix, when I should have been out developing skills, playing sports, reading books. I was absorbed in pornography for hours and hours, days at a time. Gail Dines, president and CEO of a company called Culture Reframed, which actually is a public health organization that defines pornography as a public health crisis of the digital age, agrees with Gary Wilson. She's been talking to parents about growing up in what she calls a pornified culture for years and the ramifications it can cause. Dine says, "It's the same as pollution. A parent can't say to me, 'How do I stop my kid from breathing polluted air?' I can't stop the kid from breathing polluted air. You need a movement that stops pollution." It's the same with this. We live in a toxic culture. We have to have a massive cultural shift. You can do all you want at home to protect your kid, but what happens if everyone around him is using porn? Pornographers are hijacking kids' normal interest in sexuality, Dine said. What's not normal is for kids to start looking at porn as their major form of sex education. That derails healthy development. We're going to have to adult up here. We cannot leave it to the kids to live in this toxic culture. We created this, and it's our job to help change this. I feel inspired by these educators and child protection advocates who seek healthy cultural boundaries on pornography. In fact, one of my recovery anthems, I actually have 3 of them, is a song by Matthew West, and it's called "Do Something." So we talked about recovery anthems last week, and many viewers shared their songs, music that inspires them to keep going when things get really dark and horrible. I discovered this song called Do Something while I was working on a presentation for a conference on sexual exploitation and other forms of abuse, and I was feeling incredibly sad at the abuse that happens in the world. I felt powerless to do anything about it, and I also felt a lot of shame because I'd been involved in sexual exploitation in various ways in my own life. So then the song came on the radio right at that moment, and the lyrics really spoke to me. And they were, well, and I'm not going to sing it. I can't play it because of copyright stuff, but the lyrics that spoke to me were, well, I couldn't just bear the thought of people living in poverty, children sold into slavery. The thought disgusted me. So I shook my fist at heaven and I said, God, why don't you do something? And he said, I did. I created you. So I watched the video of this song, and here are some images from it. And you know, I feel like these pictures are the opposite of pornography. The messages are beautiful. Stand up for the weak. Love. Care. Forgive. And that's my favorite. Be kind. These recovery principles are what I want in my life today, and that's what I get to choose because of recovery. The singer is Christian, and he uses masculine pronouns for God, which doesn't fit for everyone. But I really encourage you to find what inspires you. In our LGBTQ and sex addiction feature, we have a story from Vox.com titled, We Need to Know About How Grindr is Affecting Gay Men's Mental Health, by Jack Turbin, a gay psychiatrist who went onto the Grindr app to do a survey of users. Thank you to my friend and colleague DJ Burr, who sent me this story. DJ is a recovering therapist and an author whose book I Just Wanted Love is our book of the week. More on that later. This story reads, when I open the Grindr app on my smartphone, I see there's a 26-year-old man with tanned abs just 200 feet away. He's called Looking for Now, and his profile explains that he wants sex at his place as soon as possible. Scrolling down, I find 100 similar profiles within a 1-mile radius of my apartment in Boston. I can filter them by body type, sexual position, and HIV status. As a gay psychiatrist who studies gender and sexuality, I'm thrilled with the huge strides we've made over the past decade to bring gay relationships into the mainstream. The Supreme Court ruled that same-sex marriage is a constitutional right. Today in Boston, 2 men can walk down the street holding hands without consequence. But I'm worried, he says, by the rise of the underground digital bathhouse. Apps like Grindr with 3 million daily active users, and others like Scruff and Jacked, are designed to help gay men solicit sex, often anonymously, online. I am all for sexual liberation, but I can't stop wondering if these apps also have a negative effect on gay men's mental health. Since there's little published research on the men using Grindr, I decided to conduct an informal survey to ask men why they're on the app so much and how it's affecting their relationships and mental health. I created a profile identifying myself as a medical writer looking to talk to men about their experiences. I received about 50 responses. It's a small sample size, but enough to give us some clues about how Grindr is affecting gay men, and it doesn't look good. The most common reason users gave for going on the app is that sex feels great and Grindr makes it accessible, right at your fingertips. The screen full of half-naked men excites users. With a few clicks, there's the possibility of meeting a sexual partner within an hour. Neuroscientists have shown that orgasm causes activation of pleasure areas of the brain, like the ventral tegmental area, while deactivating areas involved with self-control. And these patterns of activation in men are strikingly similar to what researchers see in the brain of individuals using heroin or cocaine. So when a neutral action, clicking on Grindr, is paired with a pleasurable response in the brain, orgasm, humans learn to do that action over and over again. This can be a normal pleasure response, or it could be a setup for addiction, depending on the situation and individual. For now, it's hard to know just how many Grindr users feel their use of the app is problematic. Early research on app use and health has focused only on sexually transmitted infections, for instance, rates of HIV among Grindr users, using Grindr to get people tested for STIs, etc. Just last week, Grindr announced that it will start sending users HIV testing reminders and the addresses of local testing sites on an opt-in basis. In less pleasant news, BuzzFeed revealed on Monday that Grindr has also been sharing the HIV status of its users with third-party companies. The company later said it would stop sharing the information. Though there is this new attention to sexual health, both Grindr and the research community have been silent on mental health. Yet since 2007, more gay men have died from suicide than HIV. For some users I talked to, the author wrote, the allure of Grindr was not just the rush to feel good, it was to stop feeling bad. Users told me they log on when they feel sad, anxious, or lonely. Grindr can make those feelings go away. The attention and potential for sex distract from painful emotions. A staggering number of gay men suffer from depression, with some estimates as high as 50%. Because gay men's anxiety and depression often stem from childhood rejection for being gay, messages of affirmation from other gay men are particularly appealing. Unfortunately, these messages are typically only skin deep. A recent survey of 200,000 iPhone users by Time Well Spent, a nonprofit focused on the digital attention crisis, I like that term, digital attention crisis, showed that 77% of Grindr users felt regret after using the app. And yet they keep coming back for that temporary emotional relief. One user told me that he feels so bad after a hookup that he jumps right back on the app, continuing the cycle until he is so tired he falls asleep. Every once in a while he deletes the app, but finds himself downloading it the next time he feels rejected or alone. John Pachenkas, an LGBTQ mental health expert at the Yale School of Public Health, says, "We see patients like this almost every day. Apps like Grindr are often both a cause and a consequence of gay and bisexual men's disproportionately poorer mental health. It's truly a vicious cycle." The dynamics of Grindr are complicated and take time, and it can take time to work through all the angles. Here are some questions gay men can ask themselves to determine if they may have a problem with hookup app use, and anyone might consider these questions, even if you're not gay, or most of them. 1, are you self-soothing anxiety? So this is how to tell if you have a problem with hookup apps. 1, are you self-soothing anxiety? 2, are you addicted to sex? 3, have you lost interest in your monogamous relationship? 4, do you think you can't attain love, so you're settling for hookups? And 5, did your parents tell you being gay is wrong and you're searching for acceptance? Ultimately, the author writes, therapy can clarify these thoughts and feelings and lead to insights that can bring about a healthy change. Anyone concerned, oh, no, I'm sorry, this is mine. Okay, I'm adding this part. Anyone concerned can take a 10-question test on my website if you're concerned you might have an addiction. My website is just my name, stacysprott.com, under the Am I a Sex Addict tab. Resources for finding a therapist or 12-step recovery support group are listed there. In Sex Addiction and the Law, a case that was tried by the Supreme Court of New York State had a very favorable outcome for the sex addiction treatment field. It involves psychologist Rory Reed from UCLA, the researcher who led the attempt to get hypersexuality, a diagnosis, into the DSM as an official disorder. And in the end, the court ruled that hypersexuality is a generally accepted condition and should be allowed to be admissible in court, and should be considered as a risk factor for treatment of sex offenders. I am very excited about this legal precedent, which was toward the end of last year. To summarize, the New York Supreme Court ruled that, number one, hypersexuality, which is it's a form of sex addiction. Basically, it's very similar in terms of the definition. It is a generally accepted condition. It should be allowed to be admissible in court, and it should be considered a risk factor for treatment of sex offenders. To me, this precedent helps decrease the denial that sex addiction, by one of its other labels, hypersexuality, is a real problem and, if untreated, can increase the risk for sex offenses. It invites consideration for how we can identify and treat sex addiction, defined here as hypersexuality, to protect our communities. Way to go, Dr. Rory Reed and your legal team, for standing up for what we know is a fact, that sex addiction is real and needs intervention. In sex addiction and entertainment news tonight, Chris Rock, in a story titled "Comedian Chris Rock Talks Past Porn Addiction in Stand-Up Netflix Special," found on the Fight the New Drug website, among other press that carried the story. Thank you to Heidi from Seattle, Washington, from Federal Way, Washington, for telling me about this great story. Comedian Chris Rock recently joined with other celebrities in speaking out on the life-changing, harmful effects of pornography. Now streaming on Netflix, Rock opens up about his first tell-all stand-up routine in almost a decade. He recently was divorced from his wife of 16 years, and in a special called Tambourine, he cites porn as a big reason why. Among a range of topics he touches on, Rock talks about his self-described addiction to porn in the routine, as well as cheating on his wife several times when he was on tour, being 15 minutes late to everything because of porn, being unable to look people in the eye, and failing to notice normal social cues. With counseling, he was able to overcome his porn struggle, but it came at a serious price, the end of a marriage that had lasted nearly 2 decades. Here's an excerpt from the special, edited for graphic language. Chris says, "When you watch too much porn, you know what happens? You become like sexually autistic. You develop sexual autism. You have a hard time with eye contact and verbal cues. You get desensitized. When you start watching porn, any porn will do. Then, later on, you're all effed up and you need a perfect porn cocktail to get aroused. I was so effed up. I'm a lot better now." Now, we know that Chris Rock is a comedian. His business is to tell jokes, to make us laugh about uncomfortable things. But that shouldn't take away from the impact of what he says, though. While we don't know the exact details of his struggle or of his personal life, Rock was bold enough to lay his experiences out for all to see. And though he might not have said that porn was the sole reason for his marriage to end, he made it clear that it was a contributing factor, and his situation would be in good company, seeing as research has shown that porn can double a marriage's chances for ending in divorce. The understanding that porn isn't harmless personal entertainment is growing in our culture. States, organizations, and individuals are becoming more and more aware of the harmful social, mental, and physical effects of pornography, and it's becoming more common to see news stories of public figures adding their 2 cents to the ever-expanding, "Hey, maybe porn is actually a real problem," piggy bank. These testimonials aren't always coming from the most traditional sources either, which just goes to show that porn negatively affects a broad cross-section of people. Just take a look at this short list of celebrities who have recently spoken out against porn. This includes Terry Crews, who was featured in last week's show, Sex Addiction on the News, actor Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Rashida Jones, Russell Brand, as we heard about earlier, and Hugh Grant, among others. Add their names to the list of multiple states that have declared porn a public health crisis, and you'll see this movement of education and awareness is growing every day. The Fight the New Drug writer said, "We applaud Chris Rock for speaking up on porn's effect on his life, and we hope that his experience would be a wake-up call to others who might be struggling with the same thing. I couldn't agree more. Our sex addiction book of the week this week is I Just Wanted Love, Recovery of a Codependent Sex and Love Addict by DJ Burr. I would normally have the book in my hand right now, but I left it in my office because I show clients when I work. I want to refer it, so I didn't have it here at home, unfortunately. But from the book description, DJ Burr is a man on a mission, successful business owner, highly respected psychotherapist, and survivor of a dysfunctional life. At a young age, all he wanted was to be loved, but instead found himself targeted by a sexual predator. DJ slipped into a life of addiction and clawed his way through broken relationships and seedy sex clubs, looking for love in all the wrong places. DJ will take readers on a roller coaster of emotions as he details his search for grace and love. As a Black gay man who grew up in poverty and worked his way into a successful career and family, DJ serves as a role model for anyone overcoming adversity. In fact, DJ's story and a viewer request for learning more about his experience inspired me to create a spin-off from Sex Addiction in the News, which I'm calling Sexual Recovery Works, Success Stories in Long-Term Recovery. I interviewed DJ as my first guest, where we talked about our calling ourselves recovering versus recovered, racism and bias in recovery, and much more. And you can watch that full video on my YouTube channel under my name. I had a blast doing that interview, and I'm already in discussion with my next potential interviewee right now, a partner of a sex addict who has published her own memoir and spoken publicly about her story of healing. Stay tuned for more information in future episodes. Sex Addiction in the News is always seeking stories about sex addiction and hope for recovery in the public media to feature on our show. If you see a story you think is appropriate, please message me on Facebook or send it to email at nakedinpublicnews@gmail.com. Together we can get the word out about what the world is saying about sex addiction. So at this point, I'll take a look and see if there's any comments on the live feed. Hey, hello. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for the compliments and support. It's a blast. And it's important to really, as I was following the show or the news for a couple of years, I could see that it was so focused on the shadow side. And while that is a huge part of sex addiction, there's no question, it's just really great to be able to find stories about hope and healing for addicts and their families, and really moving the discussion also into the broader area of cultural boundaries about what's healthy and what isn't healthy. So much of sex addiction recovery is about personal boundaries, and that is a huge part of it. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. If you're on the Facebook live feed, thank you. And if you're watching this, oh, you can see Sparky's little ears. Hi, guy. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, I hope you enjoy the show, and thanks for being here. And if you wanted to watch the video with DJ, that is also on the YouTube channel. You'll see it there. So that is all our news, feedback, and Q&A tonight. Thanks again for joining me. I'll be back next Friday, Facebook Live at 5 p.m. Pacific at my author page under my name for another episode. Hope you can join me there. And until next time, I leave you with this. May you feel loved, may you feel cherished, and may you love and cherish others. I'm Stacy Sprout with Sparky, and I'm signing off from Sex Addiction in the News. Mahalo, and have a wonderful weekend. Good night.